Do you guys remember, like, maybe a year or two ago, there was that story that broke because CD Projekt Red had a bunch of their stuff like hacked and broken into, and it was pretty devastating at the time. And it actually, there's a good argument that that could have been a main reason for them moving to Unreal Engine, because all of their source code and stuff got leaked. And when that happened, it was like stolen by these hackers, and then it was sold on the dark web somehow. And we didn't really hear anything else about it after that. But guess what? There was a leak recently. It's not really a leak anymore because it was stolen and it's now canceled, and it's already been out there, but now it's actually out there. It's complicated. But this leak shows a canceled Moon DLC for Cyberpunk that was going to have a new map and was planned to basically be the blood and wine of Cyberpunk. You can see like all new areas were being built, all different sets. They were in the early stages of this. It was just gray boxed basically, which is like the very first step of building levels, is you go in there with big gray objects and you just kind of build out roughly where you're going to go and how you're going to walk and stuff like that, but not much else. But they were working on it at some point. They were working on it, and it of course was canceled and never saw the light of day. Insider Gaming did a full report on it. They could probably be regarded as the defining rags to riches game of our lifetime. It emerged in 2020 to a woeful reception, boasting more bugs than any game ever released probably, and hitting an all-time low with fans in terms of sentiment. It was an absolute shocker for CDPR, but it was ultimately turned around, and by the time the game's first and only expansion was released, it was regarded as one of the best open-world games ever made. Recently, evidence emerged online of a canceled DLC set on the moon, which was plenty of lore surrounding it. In the Cyberpunk universe, in a series of images, we see concept art, blueprints, file repositories, and some map-based data for what might have been the first out-of-map expansion for Cyberpunk 2077. And this makes sense because there was that one ending. Was it the error? No. Which ending was it? It's been too long, dude. There was the one ending where you're in the spaceship outside of like the space hotel, and it was suggesting that maybe that was going to be the expansion. That's where they were going to go with it. Was that the Arasaka ending, or was that the, I don't know. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. Oh, was it the secret ending? Do you mean the one when I thought you could get it in two different ways. Anyway, it's beside the point. The point is, they kind of hinted at that in the base game. People thought that they were maybe going to do something in space, but it just never came to light. Phantom Liberty was released in September of 23 and emerged as one of the best expansions for a game ever made. It heralded a new generation of Cyberpunk 2077, which from then was penned as Cyberpunk 2077 2.0. And for a good reason. It was the ultimate turning point for the title, with CDPR signing off and acknowledging that the game was in the best state it would ever be. Recently, images emerged on social media diving into the discovery of an unnamed moon-based expansion for Cyberpunk. In the game's universe, the moon has been colonized and cities have been built on the rocky satellite. It's being used for resources and is a key point of interest for the corporations that effectively run Earth by the time of Cyberpunk's story. It reportedly has a population of around 58,000 people, and it would have served as the base of operations for their second and final expansions. In the string of images uploaded online, we get a look at file repositories, rough map of the proposed moon location, and shots of some early conceptual images and set pieces. And as the story goes, CDPR originally intended for the moon to be featured as a location in the base game, but recognized that that was too ambitious a goal, so they cut the content and instead decided to use it for an expansion, which ultimately never surfaced. And since then, they have officially said that they have ceased development on Cyberpunk, so it is not going to ever see the light of day. And this is the actual post where they discuss this. So some of you probably still remember the huge CDPR leak from 2021. There were many interesting things that got essentially ignored because everyone focused on the third-person alpha build from 2013. One of those things were files for the moon expansion. As we all know, Cyberpunk was supposed to get multiple expansions, not just Phantom Liberty, and it seems that this moon expansion was supposed to be the Cyberpunk's Blood and Wine, bringing an early new map, or entirely new map. I'm going to share with you whatever I found and whatever I found interesting. I didn't data mine and discover any of this. As we know from the leaked bug montage, the devs thought the game would be done in 2022. With COVID happening, it would probably get delayed to 2023 when the game was actually hit the should have been like this at launch state, with PL for Phantom Liberty releasing a few months later. The Moon expansion would probably come out a year later, like Blood and Wine in 2024 or even 25 or 26, depending on the scale of the project. And now it's never going to happen. I think this expansion would take place during another corporate war or covert operation. There are multiple endings or multiple things, signs, quests throughout the base game that suggest the world is on the brink of another corporate war and that regulation or relations between corps are very tense. I recommend reading these links to give you an idea of the state of things on Moon and tensions between corps surrounding the Moon. So all sorts of stuff there, but you can see actual directories in the files referring to these: bomb crater set, Cosmodrome, the actual map we saw earlier, mass driver, old landing pad, zone north, NC base, zone west, all sorts of different things. Just looks like a pretty gigantic map. I mean, if you think of it on the scale of Blood and Wine, that's a pretty big endeavor. I mean, that's a pretty big deal. You can see some early game assets, things that were built in it, actual levels and things. What does that say? Oh, I can't quite make it out. It's probably in Polish. It's probably not even in English. Same with like these signs. They're probably just placeholder null objects or something. But this, another base, missing mesh. But they were starting to kind of lay it out and figure out what it was going to look like and how it's going to work. Yeah, with the way that Phantom Liberty storyline played out, I bet the upcoming machine wars start on the lunar surface. What little background lore there is paints it as a relatively small population colonies with absolute cutting edge tech, production, and labs, while having mass destruction weapons like mass electromagnetic accelerators to throw big things really fast at Earth. Meanwhile, Blue Eyes is recruiting runners, and shipping them on mouse to the Moon. Songbird and Lucy are the most prominent examples for players. Sounds like a great place to breach the black wall and unleash the big boy AIs into corporal forms, taken on by very big, very deadly machines. Cerberus, seen in Cynosure, was merely a maintenance bot, and it almost killed V if Songbird had not interfered. Yeah, there's so much potential with this. Do not use in the game, Moon Rover. Yeah, so I mean, it's cool to see that they were working on it, but this is why when games launch in a broken, buggy state, it can be permanently damaging. In this case, we did get kind of the best outcome we could reasonably expect to get, which is that they fixed it and it runs great now. We got a fantastic expansion in the form of Phantom Liberty, but we'll never get this expansion. But it shows that they were hopeful they could get this lined up, have a couple of big expansions, and you can tell that the executives that were greenlighting all of this, they really expected it to probably be another Witcher 3 situation, that it launches, few bugs here and there, we polish them, we release a couple of DLC expansions, and we're good to go. And they were genuinely shocked when the game was just a total dumpster fire at launch, because they just didn't know the state of it. There were all sorts of communication issues and stuff like that. But now they're moving on. They're not using this engine anymore. They're going to be doing totally different stuff, different tool sets, everything like that. And here's to hoping they figure it out. Here's hoping. Never release a broken game. Yeah, it's, again, I appreciate that they fixed it, because so often these games release and then are just dumped. I mean, Redfall's kind of the latest example of that. So I'm glad that they followed through on it. And that's something like even I think Bethesda Softworks deserves some credit for. I mean, even BGS themselves, Fallout 76 was an utter atrocious disaster, probably worse than Cyberpunk was. The only thing that made Cyberpunk particularly bad was that it released and sold on PS4 and Xbox One hardware, and they refused to give media access to that before launch, and so still sold pre-orders to those platforms, even though it was straight up unplayable on those platforms. Fallout 76 was basically unplayable on all platforms, so there was that. But anyway, they eventually figured it out, though. They fixed it, and now a lot of people love Fallout 76. So I think companies deserve credit when they figure this out. Of course, we can be like, well, it should have never been like that in the first place, which is absolutely true. But at the very least, I think they deserve some credit for sticking it out and fixing it. Because, again, as we've seen, it's real easy for them to just go, we'll get them next time. Cancel it. CDPR offered everyone refunds, but Bethesda didn't. Well, CDPR, the interesting thing with that was that PlayStation stepped in and unlisted the game from the PlayStation Store, which I don't think happened with Fallout 76, did it? I don't think they did. I think that was a pretty pretty unique move. So I don't know.
He took my thing.